to get a taste of more expensive lenses. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yo, it's Kim, and it's hard to believe how many reviews of the Panasonic 25mm 1.7 there are out there that don't compare it to the kit lens. I've done a couple of videos in the past comparing the G7 kit lens with potential lenses you'll want to upgrade to, and you can check those out below. But I do this to give a reference point on how much of an upgrade you can actually expect from the kit lens. The 25mm 1.7 usually costs about $150, and that makes a great first upgrade. And speaking of upgrades, today we're going to compare the image quality and usability between the 25mm and the G7 kit lens. Starting us off with image quality, in terms of sharpness, at f5.6, these two lenses are basically identical in the center, but the 25mm edges out the kit lens slightly in the corners. At f8, however, it's surprising that both lenses are actually pretty equal in the center, but the kit lens actually edges out the 25mm in the corners. And just for context, I compared the kit lens at f8 versus the 25mm at f4 because that's where they're both best at, and as expected, the 25mm has a slight edge at the center, but is much sharper in the corners. Moving on to colors and contrast, it's clear that the kit lens renders things a bit cooler than the 25mm. Of course, you can fix these in post. Now, in terms of contrast, the kit lens gives you a more muted look, but again, these are things that you can fix in post. But straight out of camera, the 25mm is going to give you a warmer look with more contrast. Moving on to bokeh, setting both lenses at f5.3, which is the maximum aperture the kit lens can open up to at 25mm, the bokeh size is actually just the same. You can see that the 25mm shows 7 sides of the aperture blades, whereas the kit lens is actually round. You can get a decently blurred background even at f5.3, provided you maximize the 4 rules of bokeh. Now at f8, the balls get smaller, but it's really more of the same. The kit lens has rounder bokeh balls, and the 25mm shows edges. In terms of blur, it's still quite similar, but the kit lens actually has the edge. But that's more because I had to take the picture closer to the subject with the kit lens to match the framing. Now here's one of the more interesting things I tested. If I buy the 25mm, is it going to improve my bokeh, and by how much? Well, here you go. There's a significant difference with the kit lens set at 25mm at f5.3 versus the 25mm set at f1.7. At f1.7, you have 100% of the attention set on the subject. Moving on to usability or versatility, again, my favorite category. In terms of weight, the difference between them is actually quite negligible, so when I'm out, it actually doesn't matter to me at all. Now, in terms of focal length, the 25mm is actually a little bit tighter than the kit lens set at 25mm, so you just have to keep that in mind because in general, a lens is a lot more flexible when it's wider versus when it's tighter. Moving on to low light, and you'd think that this would be an easy test because all you need to do is check the f-stop number between the two lenses and see how many stops there are between them. But in reality, that's not the case because the kit lens has OIS. So in testing, I could handhold the kit lens down to about 1/6 of a second with my ISO at 2500. On the 25mm, however, I could set my ISO at 1000. So in the end, does the faster prime provide more low light capability? Yes, but only about a stop more light. Of course, there's benefits to shooting at higher shutter speeds, but don't discount the kit lens if you're not shooting moving subjects. Now, in terms of stabilization, the Mega OIS on the kit lens is actually helpful in video. In general, the 25mm is not the easiest focal length to handhold without any sort of stabilization in the lens or in the camera. Now, in terms of changing lenses or zooming, obviously the kit lens kills the prime, so if you want to have that zooming capability, keep the kit lens. However, I'll say this, if you could just learn to use one focal length, it'll help you so much with composition. Now in terms of macro, the kit lens has a closer minimum focusing distance, but it's negligible. Plus, if you want to blur out the background, the 25mm is going to do it much better than the kit lens. Now in terms of autofocus, it's negligible. Both of them are supremely fast, and at this point we're just splitting hairs. Now here we aren't splitting hairs, but we aren't breaking the bank either because the kit lens may be free, but the 25mm is only $150. Now if you know anything about the lens game, $150 is really not that much, and for the level of optic that you're getting out of this lens, you can't beat it. Now moving on to results, in terms of image quality, I have to say the kit lens is almost as sharp as the 25mm, This isn't because the 25mm isn't as good, but the kit lens set at 25mm is actually pretty sharp. But if you want that background separation, then that's when you need to turn to a prime. Now in terms of usability, there's something to be said about a lens that has multiple focal lengths, is even lighter, and even scores points for stabilization. In fact, in terms of usability, the 25mm only edges out the kit lens in terms of low light capability. So wrapping this up, the 25mm edges out the kit lens in the same way that any fast prime edges out a kit lens, with superior bokeh and better low light shooting. I also think that just because you have a kit lens doesn't mean you shouldn't own the 25mm 1.7. These are primes versus zooms. They have different functionalities. One is made for multiple focal lengths and one is made for low light shooting and background separation. So in the end, who are these lenses for? Well, if you've already got a set of lenses outside of the kit lens, then you really need to think hard if this is a focal length you care about. Personally, I don't use it as a walk-around lens, but I do use it for work and I use it for YouTube, so I keep it. But if you're riding and dying by your kit lens and you just want that next step up in terms of image quality, whether it's better bokeh, better background separation, better contrast, or warmer colors, whatever it may be, go for it. Even if you don't end up keeping this lens forever, it's a great way to get a taste of more expensive lenses without breaking the bank. And in that sense, it's really hard to beat.